Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Vulkan, and today I have a very special video for you guys. I am joined with Sam, the developer of Sanctum Breach Rebirth, and we are jumping in to take a look at this action RPG that he's currently working on. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to talk a little about yourself and then about Sanctum Breach Rebirth and what we're going to be doing here today?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
For those of you that haven't seen previous interviews with myself and Vulkan, I'm Sam Keats, a solo dev for Sanctum Breach, which has now become Sanctum Breach Rebirth after sort of issues that I won't go into too much. But so I started game deving about nearly 6 years ago now. I started working on the first iteration of this game, Sanctum Breach, during my second year of uni, when I didn't know anything. It can still be argued that I don't know anything now. I've hit the 10,000 hours benchmark for apparently knowing how to do something, so you would think they would be good by now. So yeah, basically, I worked on the original Sanctum Breach for a couple of years, made it to Steam, just sort of halfway through alpha, going, relatively well. People playing the game at least, having good feedback and stuff. Obviously, it was because of my inexperience and the fact that I am a solo dev. But I was approached by a publisher, and I thought, this would really help progress the game. I can have sort of a stable income, so I can work on it full time. They can help me with marketing and all the things that I don't want to have to do. But after a few months, COVID hit and they went business basically. But there was sort of ongoing issues as well. It wasn't everything they had sold it to be basically. So that sort of put me off game development for a while. But after a few months, I really missed sort of like the community that I built up because I was sort of speaking to everyone on a daily basis about feedback about the game and just in general as well. So I really wanted to get back into it. So I thought now is my opportunity to start again completely from scratch. So my project and everything, I didn't import any old code or anything like that. I made it all again from scratch. I wanted to keep the same sort of vision of a hardcore, sort of old school endgame focused ARPG. But with everything that I learned over the years, I felt like I could do a much better job of sticking to that vision, making it actually fun to play rather than this sort of weird hybrid Souls-like ARPG. Sometimes people would die on the first boss and then just uninstall. I think I had like a 20% refund rate or something because people just couldn't get past the first boss. So now it's more of a steady curve into the nightmare.
Good. That way, people don't know what they're in for, right? They're gonna be invested, and then got them. Now they're.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of forgot that not everyone has played sort of like 10,000 hours of Path of Exile and stuff. So.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, not everybody's playing for that long. So yeah, I totally get that. So awesome. So it looks like you got me set up with a few different kind of builds and things like that. One for early game, one for mid game, and then another for end game. So right now we're on the early game spin to win build. So do you want to kind of talk about how your build here is a little bit different than what you'd see in other games?
Yeah, so everyone loves spin to win. Not everyone loves clicking all the time. I always found spin to win, no matter what ARPG you're playing it in. I always found it to be sort of I don't know, it was this weird hybrid of sort of difficult to use but easy to use at the same time. I loved playing Cyclone in Path of Exile.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was sort of like playing 24/7 on a league for a while, I found it really sort of taxing, sort of like physically, like on my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of all the micromanagement you have to do with the movement, between your actual movement and the skill movement. So when I created my version of a whirlwind cyclone sort of skill, I decided to make it so that once you activate the skill, it becomes like an aura, and then you can simply just move as you normally would with a left click, and it casts the skill automatically as well. And I know, like, obviously you can assign movement for left click and stuff. This way, it doesn't impede with sort of like vendor interaction, item equipment, all that sort of stuff. It is purely a toggled skill.
Gotcha. So do you offset damage because of how easy it is to use versus kind of, I'm not gonna say in other games it's more difficult, but there's a little bit more interaction. So is there a trade-off there?
Yeah. So typically when I've created skills, in the skill tree, if you want to open up, just press S quickly.
Yeah, let me get rid of this mod real quick.
I was going to get you killed. But yeah, just so we have the visual. So basically, when I design skills, I design the active and then a few passives that sort of like connect with that skill, akin to Grim Dawn and Diablo 2. With certain skills, like I've got like a Righteous Fire type sort of like Flame Aura sort of skill, and then the Berserker stance, which is the Cyclone Whirlwind, whatever you want to call it, skill. If they have this sort of if they're toggles, basically auras, fire and forgets, or like summons or something like that, then I try to balance around the fact that you don't have to constantly be actively using them. So I either make it so they don't have passives, so they're sort of like a more of a utility skill. I just, gut the damage or give it a long cooldown or, something to that effect. However, I do want every skill to be playable all stages of the game. So, as we'll see later on, with the Berserk stance, there's an endgame set evolved around it, which boosts the damage, changes the damage type to lightning, and enables you to activate lightning passives. And there's a really cool one that we'll show later on the endgame version of Berserk stance character. Because I'm all about sort of opening up different interactions with set items and uniques and stuff. So you'll see a lot of that and sort of interesting ways to enable the character build to be good again, enable you to build a character that you want to play.
I love that. So it looks like I leveled up while we were just sitting here talking, and it looks like it's 3 skill points per level. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it starts off as 3, and then it changes to 2 later on, and then to 1 as you get closer and closer to the level cap.
Gotcha. Awesome.
It's just so people can sort of quickly get into their build, but not have sort of full power straight away.
Perfect. So I flipped over. Looks like here's the mage skill tree that you were talking about, where you can kind of swap between these two. So
yeah,
is your expectation that people take advantage of that and utilize both trees, or do you see more effectiveness in kind of going for a pure style build?
Yeah. So I definitely expect people to take advantage of the dual class system. The idea is that you find synchronicity between the 2 trees in order to fully maximize the potential of your build. It might not be obvious what those synchronizations could be straight away. Some of them might be reliant or heavily influenced by set items and that come later into the game. So initially, I would advise people to just find a skill that they like and then pump a bunch of points into your mastery bar, because it gives you sort of flat damage and defense and life and everything you're going to need. And then you can max out your chosen skill and then sort of find some passives or another skill that sort of interacts nicely with that. And then if you do wish to change your build later on, cost involved with moving skill points, you're free to change your skill points as and when you please. So if you find a cool set item or unique, just get bored of your build, you can mix it up freely. There is restrictions on your attribute points, which you also gain per level. You can't reset them at all. So I kind of went with a trifecta approach. So with your skills, you're free to reset them whenever you choose. Your attributes you can never reset, and endgame passive tree, similar to the Path of Exile passive tree. I'm sure we'll get to that later on.
Yep, absolutely.
But with that one, you can reset, but it has a high cost. So it'll be based around finding a quite a rare item that enables you to reset your tree.
Gotcha. So is there free resets up until a single point, or is it just cheap the first time you do it and then it ramps up as you continue to reset?
Yeah, so with the attributes, no resets. Skill tree, 3 resets, no matter what point of the game you're at. And then with the Tempest of Echoes, the endgame passive tree, it'll start off needing 1 of this material, and then every time you do it, it'll increase 1.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. So we got our spin to win guy here, and he's blasting. I managed to get a unique drop, these quick step boots. Yeah, which is kind of like a great drop that gives me a nice little movement speed increase, which is great for this, just because obviously you can't be zipping around right out of the gate with something like this. But kind of jumping back to the hybrid build situation. So one of the things that drove a lot of people away from another action RPG out there was Wilson. And one of the things that drove them away was the fact that you couldn't really have a pure build. The game was balanced around having sort of this magic and physical. You either were a magic archer, you were a magic warrior, but there was always kind of that duality that needs to be balanced. Is it possible to go just like pure ground slam and just kind of freight train through everything and not touch that magic tree at all? Or did you balance the game around, you probably need to have some of those if you want to pass through the tippity top tiers of difficulty?
Yeah, no, so it's very much Grim Dawn style. So there's going to be a lot of classes. At the moment, there's only 3, so 3 different skill trees. Just because obviously it's early days at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm having 6 skill trees upon release, which translate to 18 classes. I think it is. I have the list here. So at the moment, the skill trees that are in the game are Warrior, Mage, and Hunter, which creates the Battle Mage, Warden, and Elementalist. And then later on, I'll be adding the Rogue, Necromancer, and Shaman skill trees, which will open up the Assassin, Zealot, Ritualist, Spellbreaker, Conjurer, Enchanter, Scout, Fell Hunter, Nomad, Demon Blade, Witchblade, and Warlock.
So just a handful.
So
just a couple.
And then, obviously, post-release, there'll be more classes, like Paladins and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm very much invested in builds and player choice and all that stuff. I don't want it to be restrictive in any way whatsoever. So if you want to just pick one skill and then have a metric crap ton of passives or movement skills or support your one-click wonder build, like you're playing Path of Exile, then go for it. But if you want to have that more intricate sort of weaving skills together to overcome certain encounters and maybe shore up any weaknesses that you may have in a single skill build, then you can do that as well. It's just it just comes down to personal preference and items you find as well. I fully expect people to build around what they find. It's an RNG based game. ARPGs are RNG based games, so build around what you find.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that I have is, as I open my inventory here, I can see some runes out here. Do you want to kind of dive into what these runes are used for?
Yeah, sure. So there's crafting in the game, and as you progress through the various difficulties of the campaign, you find different materials, so cloths and ores. And then you go to the blacksmith and you can use these to craft random items. So you pick, I want to craft an iron sword, so it requires 2 of an ore, 2 of a cloth, and then you get a random iron sword, right? Basic stuff. And then you can also use these runes to craft uniques, so rune words. And they are sort of handcrafted items with specific stats and a passive effect. So it enables you to essentially target farm for any unique items that you may need.
Gotcha. Well, cool. So that just gives us a little something extra to build around and work around. Then I love that.
Yeah, it gives you choice basically, so you can enable your build.
Gotcha. Perfect. So let's see. I want to head back Need to talk to Athu. So it looks like the Scholar's Portal, right, is what we should be using here.
Yeah, if you wish to travel back, yeah.
Let's see.
Should be able to just right click it.
Yeah. Just trying. It wasn't working. Let me try.
Good.
Yeah. We found a...
It was working yesterday.
We found a bug! Alright. So...
Yeah, you can... I've left the dev tools in so you can teleport where you need to go. Or you can use the world map and teleport with the waypoints.
Gotcha, okay. Perfect. So I noticed last time, you know, when we were talking about this, we started off in a different area, so it looks like... Did you overhaul the beginning of it, or is this just the next town kind of hub that we're in?
Yeah, this is the next town, so I just put you where it was level appropriate to put you.
Awesome. All right. So we completed a quest for old Athu down here. So that's some early gameplay. Let's switch over and let's look at kind of some mid-game gameplay to show, you know, once we get a couple more pieces of gear and a couple more skills, what that looks like.
Sure.
So I'll hop back to the main menu. And one of the things we talked about is the different difficulty levels. So do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is that there's normal, brutal, and then nightmare. These are sort of the standard campaign difficulties. Normal, very easy. You're not going to die unless you're messing around, you know. You can build however you want to build, and just sort of is there to teach you how to play the game and to introduce different mechanics. Brutal, it starts to ramp up a little bit, but again, there's not too much of a threat. And then Nightmare is where it really starts to pick up a bit. You know, your build will be sort of tested here. You'll have to make sure that you're the correct level. You'll have to make sure that you've got decent items. So I start to expect people to die here, you know, if they're not experienced or if they don't sort of really account for resistances and, you know, they stand in the fire, as it were.
If they go glass cannon builds, they're having a hard time.
Yeah, you glass cannon when you don't know how to kite. Yeah, and then you've got the Inferno difficulty. So this is players that are familiar with Diablo 3, especially sort of vanilla Diablo 3, will be very accustomed to this. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that this is a real step up from Nightmare, and you'll get your ass handed to you, like over and over again until you get good loot. And that good loot won't necessarily be easy to come by, but it's a nice challenge, and when you do find items, it will feel like a significant upgrade, especially because that's the only place you can get set items. They don't drop in normal brutal. So it's the true sort of endgame content, and it also introduces bounty bosses, and you have to kill these bounty bosses when you're on the bounty, and they give you an echo stone to be used in that in-game passageway, Tempest of Echoes, and every time you kill a bounty boss, they come back stronger.
Oh, good.
So if you want to get multiple stones to unlock multiple stones, there's an increase in difficulty every time you do so. So you can't just farm sort of like 100 easy bosses and get all your stones.
So I was about to say, so you can't you just have somebody just like, you know, hammer somebody, just one of the bosses, you know, into the dirt and get all their stones, then go try to tackle the other ones. You sort of need to spread the wealth a little bit.
Yeah, no, they get stronger really tough.
All right, so it looks like you have a setup with a poison trapper. Is this for Nightmare, or is this one set for Brutal?
This is for Nightmare.
For Nightmare, okay.
Yeah, I kind of skipped over the Brutal content just because, like I say, there's not a significant amount of change during that point.
Gotcha, okay.
It is just sort of that classic ARPG, sort of like you're building up your character, you're making your way sort of thing, so...
Perfect. All right, so let's walk through this one. So the last one was Spin to Win, where, you know, you had this awesome aura as you moved. It did damage to everything around you. which was great. So this one is a poison trapper. So what's this one sort of have in store for us?
So number one is your poison trap. So chuck it, and then it deals AoE poison damage in an area. And then one of the passives is that it makes it explode on the final tick, dealing sort of a burst damage, because otherwise it just adds poison stats, so it's just damage over time. And then second slot is your potion, your health potion, because this is a squishier sort of class. It is a ranged sort of kiting class.
Okay.
And then your third skill is a minion, summon War Dog, because it has a poison aura. So when you stack your poison damage, it translates to poison damage on your summons as well. So it boosts the damage of the poison aura, and it gives you a bit of a front line as well in case you need to get out of dodge.
Gotcha.
And then you've got 3 auras as well. So you've got one that boosts your damage over time and gives you poison. Oh no, this one doesn't give you poison chance, sorry. Boosts your damage over time. Then you've got one that boosts damage of your traps, but reduces your life, just to feed into that sort of, gotta make you squishy. There has to be some sort of like punishment, you know. You can't have it all.
Come on, just let us steamroll. What are you doing?
And then you've got Empower, because it boosts your spell damage, which boosts your overall sort of spellcasting capabilities. So it's like poison, fire damage, whatever it is. It boosts it, but at the cost of reserve. But you've got a healthy amount of mana leech, because if you look at your poison trap skill.
Oh, poison trap skill. Okay.
Sorry. There's, if you look at the wisdom bonus, for every 20 points of wisdom that you've got, you gain mana leech. So what I've done is I've tried to make it so that every active skill has bonuses based on the attributes that you've got. So it sort of adds interesting mechanics about what sort of attributes you want to stack and why.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really like that. So it gives you just a little bit extra incentive to go a certain direction.
Yeah.
So
it just enables that player choice again.
Yeah, like if you look at Summon War Dog, we have Dexterity, which is going to increase War Dog's attack speed, or Endurance, which is going to increase their life. So which do you want, right? This is,
you can't have it all, so you got to make a choice.
you truly cannot have it all. No, that's really cool. I like that. And one of the other things, as we're going through, is I noticed that some of the skills require different weapons. So what's the reasoning there?
Again, it just feeds into that player choice. It's for the same purpose that items have stat requirements. So it just enables me as a dev to come up with more interesting things, because if you enable every skill to be used with every weapon, it means that when I'm designing a unique or a stat item that has a certain effect, I have to take every single skill in the game into account. So it means that if I want to design something that boosts really fast hitting skills, then I have to design it in a way that it's not going to boost the heavy hitting skills too much as well, because obviously if you're boosting sort of like the damage of a fast hitting skill, and then you apply that to a heavy hitting skill, you're just going to one shot bosses,
Exactly.
So there has to be sort of that constant give and take, and it really enables not only the player to have a choice and their choices to matter, because if you can freely change between your gear all the time, your attributes and everything all the time, then there's no sort of permanence, there's no sense of your choices actually mattering. So why even make them to begin with? If your choices have no consequence, then you're not really making a choice.
Exactly.
So it just feeds into the overall system that I'm trying to get across.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that totally makes sense. I know, again, there's some of those games out there that they'll put those requirements in, but it seems just more to punish the player, or they think that it's going to drive more interesting builds, when in actuality, it pushes people away. So I'm glad that there's a good, solid thought process behind it.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely aware of sort of every angle of it, because I've experienced it as a player myself as well, so it's not like I'm coming into the genre sort of ignorant to these things from a player perspective. I've played ARPGs sort of my whole life, and I've played them very competitively as well. So I was a sort of top 10 ladder racer in Pathflex Alpha for years. So I know the struggles.
Yeah, you've played a few hours. You know what's going on.
I've done my time.
Yeah, there you go. I've put my time in. I love that. So it looks like we are. What level are we? 63 here. So
Yeah.
about how far into the game are we at level 63?
Barely scratching the surface, to be honest. It's one of those where you get those initial levels quite quickly. I expect people to sort of reach this sort of like they've completed the campaign sort of stage in sort of 5 hours. Maybe a bit less if they know what they're doing, maybe a bit more if they don't. But it's in that sort of 1 day completion area. And then it really opens up. Then it gets a lot slower to level up. It takes a lot longer to find gear. The enemies get huge life increases, so it takes longer to kill enemies. You can't just like nuke everything. That it becomes more sort of skill based. You have to dodge a lot more different things. It really everything sort of slows down once you hit Inferno, and that only sort of continues throughout. It doesn't really alter unless obviously you go back purposefully to grind the lower difficulties.
Gotcha. Okay. And do you foresee people doing that or having to do that to go back and spend a lot of time grinding in order to progress? I know you mentioned for Inferno, that's kind of the thing, right? You're gonna kind of get stomped into the ground at first until you start getting some upgrades. But beyond that, is there kind of a need to do that?
Yeah, so I think it depends where you're coming from. I think so. If you're, playing with a fresh account or in a race sort of environment or ladder environment, and it's your first character, then especially if you're playing on hardcore, you're not going to want to rush it. There will be a need to sort of make sure that your resistance is capped, to make sure that you're not taking too long to kill enemies because they kill you. Making sure that you've got like some form of defensive mechanic, be it sort of like overcap resistances, like max res. You've got really high defense. You've got life leech, life on hit, whatever it is, you need some, right?
Yeah.
And it's just making sure that you're in a sturdy sort of place before you can progress. That might be over leveling, it might be grinding out, like, and it is an RNG based game, like you could. I was testing out in-game builds yesterday, and I found a demonic set item, which is so when you're playing in Inferno, items have a small chance to drop as demonic, which gives them boosted stats. So if you find a demonic set item that's like good for you, then you've got a huge increase to your overall power. So you might be able to sort of like speed your way through one of the difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have that luck, then you might be grinding for a while. But on the flip side, I don't want it to be a boring grind. I've played plenty of games and ARPGs myself where it's like it's an artificial grind. It's grinding for it's it's like the Diablo Immortal grind.
It's the grind for the sake of grinds.
Grind for the sake of grind. Exactly. It's not a meaningful grind. You're not making sort of progress. It's just completely RNG based. Whereas in this, you'll be able to target farm items from bosses. You'll be able to target farm set items from the back bosses to give you like a boost. They're like 2 set items, rather than the sort of like 3-4 piece set items. So they're like small incremental boosts. You'll be able to farm vendors with magic find gear to try and find legendary items. You'll be able to run maps, you'll be able to run dungeons, you'll be able to farm like boss encounters, you'll be able to farm campaign bosses. So it's not like you'll just be running through that map that we just saw like 100 times trying to find a nice set item. There'll be a lot of variety.
Gotcha. Well, cool. So, and that's a good question. You bring up Diablo Immortal, right? So, as a developer and somebody who's creating an action RPG, there's sort of an increasing rise in mobile action RPGs that obviously they bring a different perspective to the table where things need to be sort of quick, and there needs to be a hook, something that somebody can log in and do really quick. Immortals was like, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do, my codex. I'm going to do my 3 or 4 entries of my codex, and then I'm going to log out for the day. You have other action RPGs, mobile, that kind of do something similar. So as a developer, how are you, I guess, not necessarily accounting for that, but how are you seeing that affect other action RPGs coming out? And does it affect your action RPG and some of the design philosophies that you have going into it?
Sort of. I mean, I'm very much sort of making the game that I want to play, so I'm not necessarily influenced too much by external factors like that. But it does sort of, I do see the merit to it, I suppose. I do understand that, not everyone has 12 hours to grind every day, so sometimes people want to log in for half an hour and feel like they've made some progress. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just not going to change the whole game to fit around that idea. However, there is activities that you can do, in that time frame and have a reasonable chance of progressing your character. Like, you could pick up a bounty, find a portal to the bounty boss's lair, go kill a bounty boss, and you've got an echo stone put on your Tempest of Echoes, so you've become stronger. If that's all you've got time for, then you still made progress. Or you could run a couple of maps and hope you get a nice item. You could grind out some XP, So it's not a case of like you have to sit there for 10 hours and pray that you get a set item. There will be sort of these short-term goals. The way that I view ARPGs is very much like that. Actually, it's all these sort of short-term goals that stack up to create an overall goal. That overall goal might be beating a certain boss, it might be finding a certain item. You're doing all these small incremental steps to get you to that point. So yeah, thinking about it, I kind of think that it's always been there. Actually, now that we're sort of analysing it, I don't think it's a new thing. These sort of short-term goals in the RPGs and in gaming in general, it just hasn't been sort of monetized and sort of incentivized in the same way before. It's just sort of been part of the game. You logged on to WoW and you could complete a couple of quests, or you could, depending on when you were playing, you could do a looking for group dungeon, or you could do a couple of arenas, in Perfect, or you could run a bunch of maps, it's always been there. It's just, I think games like Diablo made it more sort of prevalent in the community again because they've put it behind sort of money.
I think that's the big thing, and we'll shift back to Sanctum Breach, but that's one of the things that I thought about as well. Is it just seems like, I remember doing my first dailies in Quell de Los and in Burning Crusade, right? That was, and I thought it was great. I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this thing, and it'll progress me, and I can do it before class, or I could wake up, in the morning before school, because I was high school, so go knock those things out. But
come home from school, do it on your lunch, and then go back.
Exactly.
Or don't go back if people are on and you can raid. What's more important? Get your priorities straight.
Yeah, exactly. But that was a big thing, right? It was so. But no, that's really cool. So I think it's a good observation, a good way to look at it. So looks like I have to go find the still beating heart of a centaur. I'm guessing this is gonna be a centaur boss.
No, they're on the floor. People pass one. I need to make them more visible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're just quest items. I'm going to give quest items like that a little item label. I didn't want to do it because I'm really against like hand holding. Like I like old school, read the manual.
Yes, yes.
But no, I know people don't play like that anymore, so I need to sort of embrace the new.
You truly have to, right? Because I'm the same way. Like, that's one thing when it comes to my reviews that I'll do is, I really like the exploration aspects of things. I really like not having guidance and just being able to just open a game up and just explore. Like, just go play.
Yeah.
You know, I will find what I need to find, and I will make my own adventure, and it'll be so much fun. But a lot of people don't play like that. You know, a lot of people are older because, you know, you and I, we are growing up. You know, we're the older generation of gamers now, and people are, you know, married, they have full-time jobs, you know, some have families, some are even going back to college, and they don't have a ton of time. So having kind of those guided experiences are a little bit more for them, because I only have an hour to play. I want to make sure I progress. So it's kind of a balance you have to strike between, okay, some exploration, some not. And I try to put that in my reviews too, of like, okay, if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of time, you're going to struggle. But
yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely want to cater to both parties. And it's not to say that you won't make any progress in the game at all. It's just, you know, it is that sort of old school endgame focused sort of environment. So you will, you know, if you want to reach level 99, if you want to be killing, you know, every boss in the game, it's going to take some time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So last time around, in the original Sanctum Breach, you weren't, and I remember we talked about this a lot, story wasn't a big thing for you. Is story a bigger thing in this time around, or are we still taking sort of the, you know, the go fast approach, because truly, you know, endgame is what most people care about. So is that still the focus?
Yeah, I don't give a shit about story. You know,
what? You don't want to craft this amazing epic?
I mean, I don't think ARPGs are the place for stories. I mean,
it's really not. I don't see a lot of people reading, you know, the quests. No, I mean, you've seen as I've been playing, I've just been clicking through.
Yeah.
You know, I just need to know who I'm collecting the Minotaur heart for. Like, okay, who's the quest turn in person?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, there is loose storytelling there. You know, like, let's put it like this, okay? When I develop something, because I'm making it by myself, I have to really prioritize my time. I have to be strict with my time. Mm-hmm. So I need to spend time where it's going to get the maximum value, not monetary value. I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
More sort of, you know, enjoyment value, or what's going to push the game in the direction that I want it to go the quickest, and making an intricate story and, you know, having cool quest text that no one's going to read isn't doing that. Mm-hmm. You know, I need to spend my time on combat. I need to spend it on skills. I need to spend it on items. I need to spend it on making builds so that I know what the play experience is like. So that's the way I view it. You know, if I ever get to the point where I've got umpteen hours and I've got all this money and I can hire a voice acting team, and I can hire a storyboard artist and all this sort of stuff, then, you know, they can go on their merry way and they can make a nice little story, you know, make it into a comic book for all I can.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it's going to enhance what the game is and what it intends to be.
For sure.
The way that I view the story is just it's training wheels, you know. It's a learning experience.
Oh, it is. I mean, you know, that's what's always been for me going into action RPGs, right? Jumping in and just like, let's roll. I just need to click through this. Same thing with MMOs. I mean, I don't, like, very few MMOs do I actually care about the story, like World of Warcraft being it, because mostly that's the one I'm more connected with. But I don't really care. Roll through that stuff. I'm just going to click through the text anyway. I just want to get to the end game, because I just want to, you know, whether it's fashion game or whether it's power game, I just want to get to the end game so I can start getting the character that I want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know there are people out there that do enjoy the RPGs and stories. You know, they'll go out their way to find lore in Path of Exile and Grim Dawn, and they'll read through all the text and stuff. But I think it's very much the minority, and unfortunately, when you are an indie solo dev, you have to cater to what the majority wants.
It's true.
You don't have to please everyone, unfortunately.
Hey, as a content creator, I feel you. The comments can be rough.
I'm off.
So we flipped over to the higher level spin to win character. So
cool. Flip
over here. It looks like, are we doing Inferno 2 for this one, or is it Inferno 1?
Inferno 1. Inferno 2, you will die.
Good.
I've got an Inferno 2 character for you, but this isn't it.
Oh yeah, look at this. Visually, way different. So
right. Open up the inventory.
Okay.
If you kindly, sir. Thank you. So you got some green now. Items.
Look at that. A lot of farming went into this, okay? I spent hours and hours and hours and days to get these.
So you've got your core set for this build, right? This enables you to play this playstyle. From that, you are bare bones. You don't have any Tempest of Echo nodes. You've got like crappy yellow items like rares. You haven't even got legendaries. I think you might even have. Oh no, you do have rares. Yeah, I thought I'd put you in like a magic item. So it is very sort of like bare bones outside of the set item. So the way that I envisioned this was sort of like, this isn't your first character. This is like an old character.
Mm-hmm.
You found this set and you think, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to make one of these now.
Yeah.
So you've just jumped into Inferno. You can do it, but you have to play smart, right? Because you will get one shot if you don't. So the idea is, you've got your spin to win. It's got decent damage, but it's very much a utility skill still. But it enables you to play in a certain way, because if you open up your passive tree, your skill tree, sorry, and then swap skill trees to the mage one.
Okay.
If you hover over the one, it's in the middle, up at the top.
Okay, got it. Storm's Reproach.
Storm's Reproach. So this procs off of dealing damage, but only off of lightning damage, and it's a big sort of like AoE explosion at your location, which is obviously perfect for a melee build.
Yeah.
Typically, this is used with lightning spells, but typically lightning spells aren't at your location. They're cast at cursor or whatever, because you're a mage. You don't want to be toe to toe.
Exactly.
So it enables that interesting sort of like class interaction.
Ooh.
And then, sorry, and then you go down to the storm, which is just on the bottom right, the 9 out of 9, 5.
Perfect.
This is a sort of a toggle aura that lasts for a set amount of time and deals big AoE damage. And it has a chance to proc, because you've stacked strength, it has a chance to proc Thunderstorm, which is the one all the way to the left. 12 out of 12. So this deals a nice bit of lightning damage as well. And then it's got an interesting passive attachment to it, the 5 out of 5. So Surge should typically, because this is based off weapon damage, it's based off flat damage. So weapons get flat damage and spells have their own base damages. So they're not affected by weapons at all. They're affected by like staffs and wands, because they have spell damage rather than base damage. But anyway, I digress. So so you can proc this Surge passive using, so you cast Thunderstorm, which procs Storm Strike, which procs Surge.
I love it. Procception.
Yeah. Which then, because you've got an actual weapon with actual base damage, it deals a lot of damage, whereas typically you wouldn't take this if you were just using a pure sort of like Lightning Storm Strike build.
Yeah.
I would normally skip over this and go to the teleporting one, which is just behind it.
Which where at?
Oh, don't worry about it. It was just like fluff. It's okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was like, wait, hold on. I need to click on something.
And then if you jump back to the warrior skill tree.
Yes.
So here you've got your 8 out of 8 points in Berserk stance, your like Cyclone Whirlwind thing. So you've got a nice amount of strength and wisdom. So you've got the life leech and the mana leech from this. And on your set, you deal lightning damage based on the amount of wisdom you stack. So I've stacked you quite a bit of wisdom.
I saw 275.
So you can get the base damage of your wisdom up. So if you look, you've got high strength and high wisdom. High strength that you can wear the items and get extra life leech and base damage on your Cyclone, and then on Berserk stance. And then high wisdom to stack this flat damage based off of your set items, and to give you increased spell damage, because lightning is increased by the spell damage because you're using the spell Thunderstorm and Storm Strike. And then you've got the Infused Heart, which is just a bonus, and then you've got the Path of Wisdom exclusive on the warrior tree because it gives you increased AoE and extra wisdom.
Ooh, nice.
And some movement speed, so it's just basically everything you want. You could go with the lightning version of the exclusive skill, so if you go on the swap skill tree and head to the mage one, this Fate with a Storm, so it's just more lightning damage and shock chance. That is also a viable alternative. I just felt like in this instance, more movement speed and AoE probably would serve you better because you're trying to sort of like stay out of the way. So yeah, the general playstyle with this is to spin around, collect as many enemies as you can using your ability, and then blow them all up with your number 1, your Thunderstorm, and then you can press number 3 as well if you want extra damage.
Always extra damage.
Give it a whirl.
You were just waiting. You were waiting for that. You're like, I got this thing loaded up. Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, so as you can see, like you took a chunk then.
Yes.
You want to keep that moving, don't stand in them auras. What are you doing?
I'm trying!
So it doesn't deal much damage by itself. So the idea is that you sort of like you whirl from pack to pack, maybe gather sort of like 5 or 6 packs, and then blow them all up at once.
Okay.
With your Thunderstorm. So I've been working really hard on the back end code over the past few days to try and smooth up frame rates as much as possible, even when you're attacking sort of like 50 enemies and dealing sort of like 10 lots of damage per second, you know?
Yeah.
So you've got like 500 calculations going on per second. Obviously it's a lot for the CPU to handle, but I've been working on it, and I think for the most part I've eliminated any sort of jitter or frame rate loss on sort of like decent computers. Obviously if you're on a potato you will probably notice a bit of lag. You know, like FPS, ARPGs are famous for sort of FPS stuttering anyway, especially if you try and, you know. So,
for sure.
Don't crucify me, I've done my best.
Hey, I will say it's from the last time I played to this time, it's a noticeable improvement. Because last time I played was
cool loads, go nuts. You're recording and everything. Let's test this out. You've got a decent computer, haven't you? But
I do.
Let's
is there a
you'll have to keep going back a little bit, by the way, just so you don't lose them, because there is a thing where you if they get too far away from you, they'll despawn, because I didn't want it to be a case of people can just mindlessly run through the entire map and then just blow them up at the end, because that's just sort of like
good.
I'm not a fan of these cheese mechanics, you know.
Yes. I you beat me to it. That was my next question was, okay, do I need to go back to continue tethering these guys, or?
Yeah, they've got a range of about 4 screens, so it's you know, it's a nice sort of like range. It's not like horrible, you know. It feels natural. It's just I didn't. The other thing as well is if people want to run through the map, but they proc sort of like 300 enemy spawns along the way, and those enemies never despawn, you're going to have massive FPS drops by the time you get to the end of the map. Same with items, you know, if you leave a bunch of items behind and then you travel sort of like 20 screens away and they're still there, this is all things that cost performance. So, yeah, they have to be cold.
For sure, and I know that's a big thing, and you know, like you said, that's in all action RPGs. I know Last Epoch just went through and they had to change a bunch of draw objects and to drop their FPS as well, because it's just there's just so much going on in these games. And good. I was gonna say, and I know that in yours you can also like change the numbers too. So like this life leech I see right now, I can go through and I can shut that off, you know, and change that around as much as I need to.
Oh, I forgot about the item filler. I spent ages working on this.
Yes, that was my next question. So
yeah. Oh, this thing was a headache.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. People like they think about grinding the ARPGs, but they never think about the grind for making an ARPG.
It's true.
It's so boring sometimes, right? You know, everyone thinks, it's so cool, you make an ARPG. No.
No,
yeah, it's cool sometimes, but no, like when you're making something like a loot filler, right? You get the base code in, you know, or how you want to interact with, you know, certain like an affix, for example, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But then for every affix in the game, you have to replicate that code, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're just copy and pasting the same crap over and over again for every single stat in the game, because obviously you want to work for every stat in the game, right? You don't want to just work for one stat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there is like modular ways of doing it and stuff, but sometimes it is just a pure grind. You have to create all the variables. You have to, just
Yeah.
don't do it. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so I try to give people as many sort of settings and options out of the gate. You have to go to third-party websites in order to get a loot filter.
It's the worst.
So you can filter by type. So do you want to see like what swords? Do you want to see whatever you want to see? Then you can filter by rarity as well. So I don't want to see any sort of common items. I don't want to see magic items. I don't want to see rare, whatever it may be. You can filter by tier. So do you only want to see like the higher sort of like tier 12, tier 11 items? I'll quickly give a quick overview of this. So when you're going through the campaign, you start off with tier 1 items.
Yep.
Then when you get to Act 2, tier 2 becomes available. Act 3, tier 3, Act 4, tier 4. Then when you jump into Brutal Act 1 unlocks tier 5. It keeps going like that. So by the time you get to Nightmare Act 4, you've unlocked every tier of item. And each tier introduces, obviously new items, new base items. It also introduces new affixes as well, not just rangers, but actual new affixes. So like Life Leech doesn't unlock until tier 5, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The idea was that it slowly introduces these new mechanics to players, so they're not overwhelmed with like 70 affix choices at level 1.
Oof.
So in the loot filter, you can filter by items here, so you might only want to see, like tier 12s. Then you've got this affixes tab, so this is every affix in the game. So if there is certain affixes that you never want to see, you can turn them off.
Nice.
And then the really sort of like intricate thing that was a pain in the ass is this core affixes. So if you go on this, it's all the attributes in the game again, but they're all turned off by default. So the idea is that when you turn these on, if you turn on, say, life, increased lightning damage, and more lightning damage, then only items that have all 3 of those stats will display to you. So the idea is that you can tailor this to find the perfect item for your build. And this works in vendors as well. So when you're vendor shopping, trying to find that perfect item, you can set up exactly what you want to see in the loot filter, and then just keep refreshing it until you hit that item.
So for affixes and core affixes, then if you have affixes selected, so let's use these 3 again. So do you have to turn these off to then use core affixes, or does core affixes toggle everything else off and just show those 3 things?
Yeah, so core affixes is sort of like all of these work in the hierarchy. So, like obviously if you want to see swords, so you turn all the types off apart from swords, it will show swords. But then if you go into the rarity, you decide, okay, I don't want to see common swords, so you turn common off. So now you only see magic, rare, legendary, unique, and set swords. Then you go into tier and you decide, okay, I want to go a bit further. I only want to see tier 12 swords. So now you only see, your swords that are tier 12 and they can't be common, Then you go into affixes and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to see any of the, like spell damage and crit rate and crit power. I just want, like physical damage or something like that, So you can enable these loose affixes. So it's like, you could have like, say, fizz damage, life, and crit rate turned on, right? But anytime one of those affixes pops up, it'll show you that item. So you can be a bit more loose with it, like okay, well, I want life, I want crit rate, and I want crit power, but I want to see what else they come with, But then if you want to get really strict with it, you turn core affixes, and now you're at the point where, okay, I want to see swords, I want to see, these magic, rare, legendary swords that are tier 12, but they have to have physical damage, life, and crit rate.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's just about making it as sort of like as loose as possible, by still being a filter, but then as strict as you possibly can get as well, so you can like toggling your perfect item, and then you can just grind, and you know that when something shows up, it's exactly what you're looking for. You don't have to waste time looking at it.
And see, one of the things that I really like is how easy it is to use, right? It seems like whenever action RPGs put some sort of filter in, it starts off very simple and to the point, but then as it gains, I'll say, additional filters, it becomes more and more and more complex and bloated, and then you have things that just aren't working because there's overlapping, and it gets very complicated very quickly, to the point where you're just like, you know what, I'm just not going to use it as much. At least having something like this where you can just check things on and off, and truly kind of read from left to right. Here are the things that I want. It makes it a lot easier for people to get started.
Yeah. I didn't want you to have a maths degree in order to use the loot filter.
It's true. Oh, this would have been perfect on the Poison Trapper. War Dog's Poison Array is now permanent.
Oh yeah, it would have been. Yeah. Well, the stash is shared. I'm just saying.
Just throwing it out there. So, you were talking about demonic stuff earlier, so I picked up these demonic boots to kind of show what that was. So, do you want to talk about how the ranges work? Is it, typically strength caps at 10%, but because it's demonic, it now goes to 13%, that type of thing?
Yeah. So basically, in Inferno 1, I don't know the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but I think in Inferno 1 you have a 5% chance to find a demonic item, and the item is 10% stronger. So say, for example, you previously, this tier 12 strength capped at, I think it's like plus 24 or something if it's like the flat version, and like 8% if it's the more modifier, something like that. I don't know, don't quote me on it. But yeah, and then obviously, 10% added onto that, right? And then as you progress through, and this can affect any item, it can be, your common boots on the floor, it can be your perfect set item, it happens to all of them, right?
Yeah.
And it applies to the vendor as well. And Magic Find also applies in the vendor, and like item quantity and rarity and all that sort of stuff vendor, so you can have like a vendor farmer in your Magic Find gear.
Oh, that's awesome.
if that's your jam,
There you go.
So it applies across the board, I try and make it as universal as possible when I introduce the system. I don't want to bottleneck people in a certain way, if they want to sit and grind the vendor, with a hard-earned gold, then they can. What was I saying? And then as you progress through the Inferno difficulties, the chance of finding a demonic item becomes higher, and so does the stats, so that when you do find these items, they are more impactful. So the idea is that you find sort of like good items for your build as you progress through the Inferno difficulties, and then when you're in the upper echelons of Inferno difficulty, it might be a case of like, okay, I've got my set items, but have I got like the top tier demonic versions of them, so your build is enabled, but it's not enabled to the maximum capacity that it can be.
Gotcha. Okay.
And obviously along the way I'll be introducing new set items and uniques and stuff that can only drop at certain points in the game. I very much don't want it to be a case of like Diablo 2 with their Diablo 3 with their ancient items, I think it was called. I didn't really play Diablo 3 too much after Reaper of Souls, but I think it was like ancients, wasn't it? So it's just like, it's basically the demonic items, it's like increased versions of legendaries and set items. I think that's right.
Yes.
I don't want it to be like that, where it's just like, okay, well, I've got my full build after 30 minutes of playing, or whatever it is. And then I've got to find it all over again, and then again and again. Like in that as well. That was the thing that every Paragon level major items that you found stronger.
Yeah, and
I don't like that necessarily, but I think it's a good mechanic. You just have to limit it. It doesn't have to be all the time. So the idea is that when you go through Inferno difficulties, like on Inferno 5, you're going to be finding different uniques and set items than you are in Inferno 1, because like more unlock.
Yes. And see, that's what I really like when action RPGs do that. Like, obviously there's a certain like, oh my gosh, like factor when, you're level 3 and something drops and you're like, no way. But at the same time, it's nice to have that ramp where you have these kind of simplistic items that drop early in the game, and then kind of you have these sort of like tiers, right? You have this tiered approach, and then once you get 80 plus, you start getting the more complex like legendaries and set items and uniques that you can truly kind of build around. So I do like that approach. And you said that is something that's coming.
Yeah. Well, it's already in the game, but
Oh, gotcha.
that's just sort of a design philosophy. Like everything is built around that. You can spin the camera like in Grim Dawn, by the way, if you ever want a better angle for moving around terrain. It does obviously all fade out as well, but sometimes it's nice to have that sort of like different perspective when you're traveling through a map.
Yeah. Dig it. Let's turn that on. All right, so we are on our endgame character. This is our level 80 battle mage. So do you want to walk us through this one a little bit?
Yeah, so this is sort of this is like you're fairly kitted out. You've still got room for improvement. Like definitely, you don't have demonic items or anything like that. You've got points in the Tempest of Echoes, but yeah, you've still got definite room for improvement. So this is the Ice Queen set. So this is a Coldmage. It's all about freezing enemies. That is your sort of defensive mechanism. Bosses cannot be frozen. Figure it out for yourself. Yeah, this is not a boss killer. Yeah, so I very much focus builds around that sort of aspect. Like they have a specific thing that they are meant to be good at, and then it's your job to figure out how you're going to make it good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
So like obviously, if you can't freeze bosses and that is your defensive mechanic, you're going to need to employ something else, or just kill them before they kill you.
Exactly. It truly is a fight to the death. So figure it out.
Yeah. So number one is your sort of like bread and butter AoE spingy sort of like skill. This has a chance to freeze when it hits things. It deals nice damage. It resets it has a chance to reset if you kill things because of the passives that we took in the skill tree. Then number two, I love this skill. By the way, this is like one of my favorite skills. So it's like it's a burst that it freezes enemies and deals cold damage to them if you've got a certain passive, which you do have because obviously you're a cold mage. And it also burns and shocks them
Nice.
as well. What I really love about it is the attributes. So it has a chance to cast other skills when you use it, and obviously the wisdom one is a chance to cast Whirling Death, which is your first skill. So you can like double stack Whirling Death to sort of ensure that you're freezing things and killing them, give you a better chance of resetting it. And then Frozen Wrath is sort of the skill that becomes innate because of the set, because normally it has a cooldown. But the set echoes it, so it casts twice. So it becomes super effective for killing bosses, so clearing up that weak. Because yes, it can't freeze them, but it deals damage because you can layer your Whirling Death proliferation on there as well. You've got that Infused Heart, that number 5, which is just sort of a nice sort of boost to your damage when you are fighting bosses. And then 4 is from the Warrior Tree. It's a Battle Charge, so it reduces the cooldown on skills and gives you sort of like a burst of movement speed to get you out of dodge.
Ooh, nice. I like it.
Yeah, so the idea is that you drop all your skills, use that to run away while the damage over the time or the ticks are bringing the enemies down, and then you can you've got everything reset then, and you can charge back in. And then the set also, when you freeze enemies, it deals a portion of their current life as damage. So it's nice for sort of keeping those resets going. It's very much a reset sort of character, a reset sort of build. So you need to be at the point where you're killing enemies efficiently in order to run properly, because otherwise you're going to find yourself stuck with cooldowns while they're whacking you in the face.
No, because I'll be able to battle charge away.
You've got it all figured out.
Yeah. And it looks like we took the Fate Weaver's Blizzard, which is the opposite that we took right last time with the Fate Weaver's Storm.
It's perfect for this, extra cold damage and freeze chance.
Love it. And then I noticed we had 1 into Turtle Stance. So blocking, parrying, or dodging restores maximum life. Love that. So love it. So as for dexterity, it looks like we got a little bit of dexterity in there. So hopefully that'll help us out.
Yeah, it's just trying to get those sort of sustainability passives. just utilizing the dual class system, because obviously warrior innately has more sort of like tanky passives and actives, so you're leaning into that a little bit to make yourself a bit more robust.
Gotcha. So
you want to try and find the boss?
yeah, and I was gonna talk to you or have you talk a little bit about these ancient ruins here, because this is sort of the end game, like I don't say hub, but sort of like the end game area, right?
Yeah. So it's just a little sort of like I guess it's a hub, but it's kind of, it's just got. Oh, I didn't put the video in.
That's okay.
Yeah. So this white background's not meant to be here, right? Normally it'll be like a starry sort of like background that moved. It's a video. I forgot to package the video and put it in the build. That's why it's not working. I'll get that sorted.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this is like a Path style sort of system. So you've got minor nodes that connect together, and you reach sort of keystones, right? And these keystones have build enabling or defining effects. So it's bloody hard to read about the background, isn't it?
That's all right. This is 10% of your 10% of your maximum mana is added as bonus damage, but it has a 20% chance to drain 50% of your mana.
Yeah. So the idea of this is that if you don't need your mana pool as much because you've got mana leech or you've got mana on hit, or your skills just don't simply cost that much mana to use, then you can sacrifice your mana to deal damage.
Love that. And then this one looks like its pairing has a 25% chance to stun the damage dealer and a 10% chance to bleed yourself for 2.5% max life.
Yeah, so you're sacrificing that sort of life in order to give yourself time to either kill the enemy and life leaves you back, or to run away, or whatever you might want to do. I'm very interested in having sort of keystones have drawbacks, so it's not just a case. Well, it's just the entire game sort of like design philosophy. I don't want it to be cookie cutter. I don't want it to be black and white. Pick the thing that gives you plus 1,000 damage.
Absolutely.
That has to be sort of like player choice, and you have to build around these things. Maybe you've got a unique item that makes it so that you can't take bleed damage. So that becomes thing but positive.
Yeah.
It's things like that. You got to. I want people to think a little bit. When they're putting their in-game characters together.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Like you said earlier, you can't have everything, right? You have to. There has to be some give and take.
Yeah, you can't even have a bloody video playing in the background of your passive tree either, apparently.
No, not at all. All right, so it looks like we can. Okay, so while we're sitting here, so you have the bounty table, and at this point, if I don't have any bounties, 'cause I already have 2 over here, then there's one for me to accept, right? Like it pops up, and like Scotum or Venator, they'll be here. I accept those.
Yeah.
And you can have multiple bounties active at one time.
No, you're only meant to have one. That's so basically, I used this character when I was testing Endgame, and I bugged it out so that you've got 2. But when you complete 2, you will only ever be able to have 1. You're on a legacy character.
Yeah, let's go. So
I just didn't have time to sort. Make a new character.
You're good.
After I think, unfortunately.
So
yeah, the idea is with these bounty portals, you run around sort of like the campaign maps, and you have a chance to stumble upon the boss, which lead to the boss realms. You go into the boss realm, kill the boss, or it kills you, and then you you get an echo stone to spend in the passive tree.
Nice. And it looks like you have up to 100 of those echo stones.
Yeah. The tree is in its first phase at the moment. It'll be massive by the time it's done. It'll be about 500 nodes in total.
So that's about a third of the size of Path of Exile, if I remember correctly, right? Because PoE is 1,500 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's about that at the moment. I might go a bit more, but I don't want it to. The thing that I found with, because I played Path of Exile since closed alpha, I think, so like 2009, something like that.
So
and over time, it has become quite bloated, I think, and I don't want it to be a case of I'm just adding nodes for the sake of it, and I've run out of interesting ideas or places to go with it. So as long as I've got ideas, I will add to it.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to come. And again, I don't want it to be a case of like you have to study it for days and days and days before you can even spend a single point because you're so worried about screwing it up.
Yes, you want to get your PhD in and build theology, right?
But, yeah, I'm definitely all about player choice, but I think there has to be a cut-off somewhere. You can't just constantly try and one up each other.
Exactly. You don't want to add for the sake of adding because
yeah, exactly. I think like Grim Dawn. I think their version of the passive tree is plenty big enough. And what's that? Like a couple of 100 nodes.
Are you talking about devotions?
Yeah, devotions.
Yeah, which is great, and and it still has that same level of like, oh my gosh, the possibilities.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you don't need sort of like 1,000 nodes in order to get that sense.
And I think that's the thing that gets lost with people too sometimes is they feel like they have to, right? You need to open it up and have this huge sprawling, like interconnected web of something to kind of have that shock value. Whereas a lot of the nodes are ones you're not going to get to use.
Yeah. I think when people first opened up Path of Exile's passive tree, it was very much that shock factor, like you say, because they'd never played Final Fantasy before. They didn't realise it was off.
Exactly, and that's exactly what when I first opened it up in beta, I was like, oh, so this is just like Final Fantasy skill tree then.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I've been playing Final Fantasy 10 for 5 years, here we go again.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. I love it. I love the game and everything. It's just funny when people talk about it as like it's this new thing.
It's brand new. It's never been done before.
Yeah.
So while I'm making my way to one of these bosses, what are some tips that you would give people if they jump into Sanctum Breach Rebirth for the first time?
Go on Steam and give me a positive review.
Good, that's a good tip.
No. So I think just take your time with it. Have a read through the skills because not every skill is going to be for every person. That's the same as any ARPG. You have to sort of find the build that you enjoy playing. Like I hate playing sort of like pet builds and bow builds, so I always stay away from them. Obviously, if you've never really played an ARPG before, you're not going to know what you like, so just take your time to make your characters and skills. And just, take it easy. Just explore the game. And just, there's no leaderboard, anything like that in the game at the moment. So there's no pressure to try and get max level, all that sort of stuff yet.
So
it's very much.
I heard at the moment for the leaderboard thing. Is that going to be something that you eventually want to add?
Yeah, it won't be long either. I'm looking to implement Steam functionality in the coming months, so it'd be like leaderboard, Steam achievements, all that sort of stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I noticed there was an extra screen for host game that I didn't remember seeing that last time, but I just missed it.
Yeah, Oh, nice! You got a set iron.
Yeah, let's go.
They're quite rare.
Nice. Perfect. We've got it on. We got it on recording. It's perfect.
Street of luck.
It is. I know. I get that all the time, and I have literally the worst luck in everything, including drops. But I always get that. Oh man, yeah, you just happen to get it. I'm trying to kill these guys off so we can look at it. There we go. All right. Yeah. So the anger of nature.
Oh, it's the minion. Oh, minions. Boo.
The game heard you. It was like, okay, watch this.
Actually, I remember this one. This one's quite cool. So it's based around dealing like bleed damage. Because normally Warcry is sort of it's a physical damage AoE spell on the warrior. But the idea with this is you can use Frenzy to stack your attack speed on raptors, and raptors have a natural chance to bleed when they're dealing damage. Their attack doesn't deal flat damage, it adds bleed stacks. So the idea is that you've got all these sort of splash bleed effects going on because they're attacking faster because you've got the Frenzy attack speed buff up, and it applies to your minions as well. And then you're using Warcry to add to the bleeds as well. So yeah, it's just like a bleed stacking machine.
Nice. There you go. So if you're somebody who's big into bleeds, look for the Anger of Nature set.
Yeah, it's just about enhancing that sort of again that skill sort of interaction. Making it changing the nature of a skill and making it fit with another skill to enable the concept of the build.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Right. So the multiplayer. So I hate multiplayer in ARPGs.
You got to have it these days.
Naturally, I'm going to have it. Obviously.
Yeah, of course. Just like pet builds.
Right. Yeah. No. So everything is coded with multiplayer in mind. It's all ready to go. It works. However, running a dedicated server to host a multiplayer game is expensive. It requires daily sort of income because it has a daily cost. So it's one of those things that I'm not invested in beta at all. There's sort of local co-op where you can host, but it's not supported in the sense of like I don't want people playing like it. I don't recommend people playing like it. The only reason it's left in is because it's just testing purposes. Basically, I probably will disable the option to even do it, just because I don't want people to get a bad impression of the game because like I say, it's not ready to be played in that way. But all the code is replicated, which is like the way you have to set it up in order for it to work with multiplayer.
Are you talking about Steam's remote play or remote co-op or whatever it's called?
No, it's set up with a local host. Like the way Grim Dawn do it.
Oh, okay. I
don't know how they still do it. But I'll integrate that with Steam as well, so you can play through Steam.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but like I say, I'm not big on that way of playing, so it's not something that I've really invested time in. Going back to where I have to invest my time, it's not something that I've invested time into yet. However, if the game does get big enough where I can justify having a dedicated server, then I would love to do that. I love sort of like ladder resets and stuff in ARPGs. I think is what keeps people coming back primarily. So it's definitely a road that I would love to travel down. It's just not viable at the moment, and there's no point dumping resources and everything into it for something that is a way off of happening. So yeah, it's on the to-do list, but it's not a high priority.
Gotcha. And I know, it's a little bit of a different genre, right? But V Rising, they made it available for people to go out and get their own private server with G Portal or whatever. And folks have been kind of running their own thing. And then Grim Dawn sort of did something similar where they allowed people to download a hosted game, and that set up seasons. People were able to set up seasons and leagues and stuff like that in Grim Dawn, which is really cool, by the way.
Yeah, I love them. I play all the Grim Dawn seasons. I'm just waiting for season 4 now.
Yeah. Are you planning on doing something like that?
Pardon?
Are you planning on like giving people, I guess, the ability to do something like that?
Yeah. So it's definitely something that's on my radar, and it'll either be one of two things. It'll either be that if the game doesn't get to the point where I feel like I can have a continued dedicated server and do sort of like the Hero Siege, Path of Exile sort of thing, where it's like ladders every couple of months, ladder resets and leagues and stuff, which is what I would ultimately like to do. But that is the more expensive. It needs to be like a proper game for that to happen. But then if it gets to the point where it's like I financially can't go down that road, or for whatever reason I choose not to, then I will definitely go with option B, which would be the sort of the player-led multiplayer activity.
Gotcha. I just it's kind of an interesting balance between those two. You know, like I have my own V Rising server, and even just having like something simple like that, it's still a lot of maintenance. I mean, you got 20 people on there, and folks, hey, I'm trying to do this and it's not working, and you know, and you have to set up all your own like rolling restarts and your maintenance periods and maintenance windows and all that stuff. So, and that's just from somebody who's, you know, grabbing a server from somewhere else and just tinkering with the settings a little bit. I couldn't imagine, you know, everything that goes into actually hosting your own servers and needing to set it all up for your own game and all that.
Yeah, and the other thing that people need to consider as well, I think people are quite ill-informed on the whole multiplayer discussion, especially in ARPGs, and it's no one's fault, you know. Like, I don't, you know, blame people for this, like the player base in this instance. But I feel like people sort of miscategorize what they want and what they get out of multiplayer a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, when you make an ARPG multiplayer, you have to think, why am I doing this? You know, like, do I want to play together? Do I want them to be able to beat certain bosses together? Do I want them to be able to beat the campaign together? Do I want them to be able to trade? Is it peer-to-peer trading? Is it marketplace trading? Is it, you know, are they going to external websites to trade? And then once you've answered all those sort of questions, you have to then think about how it's going to impact the single player versus multiplayer experience. You know, is it always beneficial to play in groups? And are you gutting the single player experience if you don't play in a group? You know, are you trivializing all the bosses by playing in a group? Can you aura stack? You know, like what happens to drop rates? That's the massive one, you know, because you don't want, if you're playing in a party of 4 all the time, or you can just trade all your items all the time, then you need to significantly reduce the drop rates, because otherwise people are going to be kitted out in full gear by the end of the night, because instead of one person finding set items, you've got 4 people finding set items, or we've got the whole player base finding set items and then trading them around, you know? So it's like...
There's a lot that goes into it other than just, I want to log in and play with my friends.
Yeah, exactly. But then, obviously, if you say you want to play with your friends, right? So then you make enemies harder, right? You go the Diablo 2 route, you know, like toggle player 8.
Yeah.
But then what happens to the builds that are really squishy and they can't survive the damage of a player 8, you know, common enemy looking at them, right? Mm-hmm. Then either they need to change the whole build, or they need to constantly have people in front of them, so it changes the way they play and stuff. And it's just, there's a lot that goes into what would seem to be a simple, I just want to play with my friends, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and like I say, it's no one's fault, you know, it's just, you know, playing with friends, like working on playing with friends is 2022, you know, multiplayer games are a thing.
Yeah.
It changes the landscape of the game. It changes all these design questions. It changes, you know, everything about the game, unless you go, you know, what Path of Exile eventually done and have like the solo self-found leagues, and then they have, but even then I don't think they lent heavily into that, you know, they didn't modify drop rates as far as I'm aware for those leagues, you know. So yeah, it's something that I'm very, very hesitant to do, because I don't want it to change the foundation of the game.
Well, for sure.
If I do go down that route, I will need to think of interesting ways of handling. And I do have sort of like concepts in mind. It's just, it's all early days sort of stuff. You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's another thing to call out too, right? I mean, the Sanctum Breach is still in early access, so it's still under dev, and there's still a lot that goes into it and stuff you're thinking about. So yeah,
this is like the first batch of beta. I expect it to be in beta for a while, so this is all post-release sort of stuff with multiplayer. I'm not gonna promise multiplayer and then spend 3 years to deliver, you know.
Yeah, no, without saying it. Okay, so is there a way to jump in and show off one of these bounty bosses?
Yeah, so you'll have to find the portal, unfortunately. But if you go to Overgrown Ruins, level 3,
okay,
just use the dev hacks.
Yeah.
Normally you can't teleport to this zone, but we can cheese it and just keep teleporting, because a portal has a chance to spawn here. Normally you have to work your way through all the levels to get here.
Gotcha.
But,
Did they spawn in the same spot, or are they random placement?
same spot. They just have a chance to spawn. So if one is here, it'll be behind the boss. So one isn't here. So you can just reload the zone.
Okay. That is brutal, putting it behind the boss.
Funny, isn't it?
So is it like right up here? Typically.
Yeah. If it'll be there, it'll be there.
Okay.
So just keep loading it until you find it. They've got a decent chance to spawn. I think it's like 20%. So
okay, so I mean, after 5 times we should have one.
Yeah. I just didn't want it to be like, you know, you can just rinse and repeat into the same spot, and it's always going to be there. You know.
Oh, for sure.
I want it to be so that you can farm them decently, because they do have set items that they drop and unique items. But I don't want it to be a case of like, it's super easy to access them all the time.
Exactly. All right, so we should be looking pretty good the next couple times.
If only that's how our OG worked.
Exactly right. The gambler's fallacy.
Yeah. I'll happen this time.
Exactly.
I've reached 100% odds now.
Exactly. I have no idea why I keep losing my money at casinos.
Yeah. Play blackjack. Don't play roulette.
Yeah, no joke. I am terrible at gambling in general, so I just avoid it. I'm the guy that like goes to the casino and I put $20 in, and then like whatever happens. If I lose 20, great. If I make some more, great. That is it.
The only people that are good at gambling are the ones that don't do it.
That's true. It's always the success stories, right? It's like yeah, I made $1,500 the other day. Oh wow, that's so cool. How much did you put in? I mean like 10,000, but it's okay though. I made 1,500, and that was cool. Yeah, exactly. We don't have a house to go home to, but don't worry, I got the $1,500.
Yeah, a win's a win, right?
Yeah.
I think you've used up all your RNG.
I really.
Not that item.
This is okay. This is a good example of my realistic streamer luck that I have. This is typically what happens when I go in to make videos and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I just
Yeah. Imagine if I go up the mountain, it doesn't actually spawn in.
That'd be perfect. It's all tied to that damn background of your Tempest of Echoes. Because that video isn't in, the portals aren't spawning.
I definitely saw one when I was playing yesterday. I know I did. We'll try a different zone in a minute if this doesn't behave.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
There it is. Knew it. I knew I went crazy.
Let's go. Okay, this is the one that I can never beat, so this is be really good. So this is Venator the Hunter, Nature's Prowler, which is an archer, and it's on Inferno too. So this is gonna be fun.
Keep moving.
Oh, I'm going. Trying to.
Don't get in melee range, by the way. If you get in melee range, she'll shotgun you.
Oh, good.
It's like watching Dark Souls. This is bloody intense.
I know. I was sitting here like trying to let my frozen wrath do a lot of the heavy lifting. Oh God.
It's so funny when designing bosses, because I sort of learned that the thing to make really intense boss fights, it doesn't need to be like, you know, crazy amounts of AoE or like they're attacking like 100 times per second or something. Just make the area small. Make it a small enclosed area, and it really ramps up sort of like the tension.
It's true. I will give you that 100%. Because yeah, when it's small areas, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're like, where do you go? You know, and especially because those those sort of like fire arrows that come down, they're random. They're based on your player location. So they grab your player location when they spawn in the air, and then they put a random point around you. So every time she casts, it'll be somewhere different. So you never really know where you have to go.
Interesting.
It's not like there's a safe zone, you know. Whereas with this, the multi-shot, the green multi-shot that she's doing, obviously that's always in front of her.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, yeah, like the smaller you make areas. Nice. We did it! Yeah.
No, Luke.
No, that's okay. The victory enough, right? Friendship was the end game all along. So once that one gets completed, because that might have been the one that was bugged out, right? The one that was the secondary one.
Yeah. Well, they both still work. You got a point from it. You'll still get a point from it. It's just that you're not meant to have two active at once.
Gotcha. So, let's see. Oops. So to get out, do I have to portal out?
Yeah. You can just portal out with your world map, or you can cheat and portal out with the dev toolkit, or whatever you want to do.
No. So, is the Ancient Ruins site in every hub? Or I guess the portal, rather.
Yeah, every hub.
Nice. So you have to go back here, and now that we have a Tempest of Echoes point, we can spin that. See, 1 of 100 here. And there's no restrictions, so you can put this anywhere.
Yeah, well, you have to be connected.
Yes.
The nodes have to be connected, but yeah, you can go wherever you want.
Let's see. Got some resistances. I go for the increased life. That's what I'm going to go for.
Good choice.
I need all the help I can get. So you can reroll bounty costs. I see that.
Yeah, so if you don't like the bounty that you're on, because obviously, like, I designed every boss with specific strengths and weaknesses. So obviously, if you get stuck, quote unquote, on a boss, you can spend gold to re-roll it and try your luck at a different one.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. Okay, so one last thing I want to talk about. So we've talked about, the Tempest of Echoes. We've seen some really awesome builds that you put together to kind of showcase the flexibility. But, what are some other things, I guess, in terms of endgame that you're looking to implement? We have this one. Do you have anything else in store that you want to add to kind of build a buffet of endgame in Sanctum Breach Rebirth?
Yeah, loads. So obviously endgame is the goal, Obviously, I wanted to be all about sort of like character builds and items and all that sort of stuff, but need to be doing stuff to make those item drops. So,
yep.
So with I don't think I mentioned it, but with the items, I've already put together a spreadsheet that people can view, if they want to find out where items drop and stuff. Pinned in Discord. I always want to be sort of like transparent about drop rates and like where things drop and stuff, just so I'm not leading people, down the garden path, being like, oh yeah, go get this item. 0.01% chance to drop.
Yeah, exactly. Have fun.
Yeah. So basically, set items and stuff, they drop in specific zone, specific acts. Like in, I don't know if you played Hero Siege recently, but with their angelic items, they drop in certain acts. So the idea is that if you really want, I think this Frozen Wrath set, I think it drops in Act 3, which is where you are now. So if you're specifically looking for this set, you can farm any zone in this act, and you have a chance to drop it. Whereas it won't drop in Act 1, for example. That's a different pool of items. So yeah, one of the endgame things that I'll be adding in the next patch, so this is something that I'm actively working on, is it's an endgame map system, similar to Path of Exile, but with my own sort of like intricacies. So I've got a brief overview here that I wrote for myself.
Good.
Right now, it's very loose because I sort of work very like disjointedly because I've got the ideas in my head. I don't need to like explain them to other people. It's very,
yes.
But yeah. Keep with me. So, endgame maps are called fragments. They drop from enemies as consumables, and then when you right-click them, it opens a portal to the zone. Akin to the map system in Path Exile and like Mapsworks in Torchlight and stuff like that, but you can just use them straight from your inventory. You don't have to go anywhere special or do anything. You can just use them there and then, right? So they have a bunch of enemies and a boss.
Yeah.
So it's just a typical sort of like zone as you're in now, and then it'll have randomized enemy types, and then a boss at the end of the map. It'll have random modifiers that spawn on the map, so it might be like enemies have 50% more cold res, or it could be like player movement speed is reduced by 30%, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you defeat the boss, a chest is spawned, and this chest will have increased chance to drop set items and uniques based on the act that the map is based on. So, say for example, I make a version of this zone, this campaign map.
Mm-hmm.
It will be classed as an Act 3 map. So, items and uniques that drop in Act 3 will have an increased chance to drop from this chest. So, you can think of it as sort of like, okay, I'm farming for my Act 3 Frozen Wrath set, and I get this map that's based on Act 3. It'll have in sort of like the consumable text, an Act 3 map, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So people know. So you think like, okay, I've got this map. I know it's going to be harder than the regular campaign zone that I'm in. Mm-hmm. If I manage to complete it, I've got an increased chance to get the items that I'm after.
Nice. So it's an increased chance of target farming,
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. It's just giving you a nudge in that that direction.
Gotcha.
And then there'll be other things thrown in. This is just like what I'm working on next. I don't want to overwhelm the player base and just chuck loads of different content at them at once. So it'll be sort of like incremental patches. This is going to be introducing the fragments, and then this patch is going to introduce the necromancer skill tree. This patch is going to introduce dungeons. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So then later on, one of the in-game systems will be dungeons. So these will be more labyrinth-based. So there'll be multiple floors to them, and they have sort of very much more sort of structured bosses, kind of like Diablo Immortal, what they done with their dungeons. I had the idea first though. I had it written down ages ago. But so unlike Diablo Immortal, you won't have to be in a party to enter them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Your Visa card.
You will you'll be able to choose the difficulty of the dungeon. So you'll be able to tailor the experience to you, and then the harder that you make the dungeon, the more mechanics are introduced to the bosses, and the greater the chance will be to find items, and specific items will be gated behind specific difficulties as well. So it'll not be end-game content, but it'll be scalable end-game content, just like the Infernal campaign grind is, and just like the maps will be as well, because maps will scale based on the Infernal difficulty you're currently in. But the dungeons will have their own sort of set difficulties.
Gotcha. Will there be any restrictions to access? You might have mentioned that. I might have missed it.
Yeah, so with the dungeons, I haven't worked out 100% yet, but I think I will probably have restrictions, just because if you don't have restrictions, it sort of it reduces the grandeur of it. I suppose it reduces that sort of like, like I'm gonna find something cool here, and if it goes back to that sort of like design philosophy as well, like with multiplayer. By restricting it, I can boost the drop rates to make it so that when you are in there, you're more likely to find something. Whereas if I make it, there's no restrictions, you can do it all the time, I'm going to have to lower the drop rates, because otherwise it's going to be too effective versus other methods of farming.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to gate things, because then it sort of gives you... I never want to go for guaranteed drops, because I feel like that's boring, but it gives you an increased chance. So yeah, I'll probably gate it behind something, maybe gold, maybe make it a gold sink, or something akin to that.
Yeah, because I know like Grim Dawn, theirs is behind a key.
Yeah, skeleton keys, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you get to a certain point, that becomes null and void, because you have like a million corpse dust.
Exactly. Exactly.
um, so yeah, no, I want to make sure it's always a relevant gate. People may think the goal isn't, but then I very much tailored sort of like the item finding experience around that. You know, like you are going to want to be farming vendors at some point if you're looking for specific items, because it's just a much more effective way of doing it if you have the gold saved up, obviously. So it's like a cycle of like, okay, I'm killing enemies, I'm picking up items, I'm selling them for gold. Now I can dump a bunch of gold in the vendor to try and find this item, you know? Or if I've got to the point where I'm happy with my gear, but I just want to progress with like set items and stuff I can't find in the vendor, then I can save the gold and I can use them to unlock these dungeons, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a shift in the use.
Nice.
So yeah, and then there'd be like, you know, like mythical boss encounters where you go fight a phoenix or a dragon, you know, in like a one-on-one sort of situation.
Is that like,
you know, like
what we used to have
uber
in
bosses.
was that like in the original Sanctum Breach?
Yeah.
Nice. No, I always liked those, jumping in and fighting those things.
Yeah, well, like you say, there needs to be sort of quick activities as well, doesn't there? For people that have a lot of time. So
Exactly. Well, awesome. So the last question I have, well, two actually, is in terms of release date. Is there one? And do you have anything that you want to kind of wrap up on?
yeah, so I do work a full-time job as well. Obviously, I try and put in as many hours into this as I can as well. I'm currently sort of doing like full-time in both. Sorry, Annie, I do love you. I do try and spend time with yeah, so and I don't want to rush it as well. I feel like last time I rushed because it was my only source of income, and I was very sort of like I got to get this patch. So, you know, it gives people a reason to sort of like buy the game. Whereas this time I'm not reliant on that income, so if people buy it, you know, it's nice and I can use it, you know, like to further the game, like I have done with the UI overhaul. But I don't want it to be a case of like I'm putting out wonky content that doesn't really work, or I'm just sort of working on the game when I don't feel like I should be working on the game. Because that's the other thing, you know, like if you're just adding content when you don't really feel like creative, you know, like you're not in the mood, that's when you end up with plus 1,000 damage to Berserker stance rather than Berserker stance does lightning damage you to use this passive and all that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
You have to be inspired when you're creating items, just like you would with any other form. Game development is an art form. So yeah. It's ready when it's ready.
Perfect. That's the way I like it. You know, there's nothing worse than, okay, this game's coming out and you get people really excited for it, and then delay. Okay, but we're pushing it back to this date. You know, and you go through the whole kind of cyberpunk life cycle, which was just not great. And just don't have a release date. You know, like just go at your own pace, and you know, if you want to kind of co-develop and co-collaborate with players doing what you got here with your early access thing, and that's the way to do it.
I mean, I'm always open to player feedback. I talk every day on Discord and stuff, you know, so if people ever have bugs or feedback or whatever it may be, then I'm always receptive to that. I might not always implement it because, you know, not every time someone says something, it's not, you know, gold. It's not gold every time I say something, so,
Yeah.
you know. But I'll always listen and have a discussion about it. So, another sell item. What is this?
Let's go. Don't touch the drop rate. Don't touch the drop rate.
What's this one?
The Reach Within.
Oh, I like this one. I like them all.
That's true. Lacerate is converted to fire damage and burns. From the Ashes always resets Inferno's cooldown, and Touch of Flame travels 50% further.
Yeah, so From the Ashes always resets Inferno. So Inferno is like what was that skill in Diablo 3? You know the one where you have like a little fire explosion around you, and then you get this legendary item that makes the fire explosions like travel with you, like follow you and reset. I can never remember what it was called.
I can't either.
People in comments will remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that one. So it's the one in the middle. The Inferno.
There we go.
The fire one. That one, yeah. So it's a big fire explosion, right? But then if you take the passive, you can make it so that it repeats, but it's smaller. And then the other one is, and it follows you. And then the other one is that it has a chance to reset on death, so you can like keep it going.
Interesting.
Whereas with the set item, it always resets, so you can always keep it going. So it becomes your sort of primary damage skill, whereas before it's kind of like a secondary sort of like burst, sort of like damage skill. Touch of Flame is grabbed straight from Path of Exile. I'm terrible at names. I can never remember. What's it called?
It reminds me of Cone of Fire, like.
Yeah. I bloody love this skill as well. I played it loads.
Flame Jet. Flame.
Yeah. It was something. Yeah, you basically like cast like flame out of your hands, you know, and then with this you can make it into like a split it so that you can shotgun with it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then the set item makes it so that it travels further. So it comes, because at the moment without the set item it's quite sort of melee ranged. You can showcase it if you want. Just take points out of the skills that you've got in currently. You can just dump points into the skills that we're talking about. If
let's do
it. What they look like.
Let's do it.
I kind of forgot that you can just like take points out.
you just right click.
So if you hover over, there should be a plus and a bonus.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. What do we got going on here? Okay, let's pull these out, and I'll show off. Let's do Flame Jet.
Yeah, fiber. Yeah, who needs cold?
Exactly. We're just gonna flip it over. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll show this really quick. Then let's put this down here. Keeping that proliferation though. All right, so here's Inferno. Okay, cool. So that's like a big ground slam that shoots out some fire.
Yeah, if you put the passive points in it.
Oh, okay. So there's your Flame Jet too.
Yeah. So with the Touch of Flame, if you put points in the passives, you can split the flame, so it becomes like an AoE sort of like. And then if they're in melee range, it shotguns them. And then with Inferno, the points in the Inferno makes it so that it follows you around.
All right,
and
so
repeat.
I'll do follow and then spiraling.
Yeah. The other one is penetration.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. So here's this. Okay. So yeah, it splits it into 3.
Yeah, and then obviously if they're stood in the center of that flame, then they're going to get hit by all 3 of their shotgun.
Oh yeah. And that just follows you. Nice. All right. Let's see.
Obviously, you don't have a lot of fire damage, so this is going to be weaker than your cold skills. But
yeah, that's okay. We'll see.
Yeah, it was more just to showcase the actual design of the skills.
Yeah.
And then obviously with the set item that we was talking about, this Inferno will always reset, so you can keep it going constantly. So that's why it doesn't deal huge amounts of damage, because obviously I designed with these things in mind. So obviously once you've cast it, you can forget about them, and you could be casting your Touch of Flame as well, you know, so you've got the double whack. And then obviously Touch of Flame with the set, it travels further. The Lacerate is normally a warrior skill, and it normally deals physical damage, and it normally bleeds enemies. And then with the passive, you can make the bleed stacks blow up, so you can stack loads of bleeds on the target and then blow them up with Lacerate with the Expunge.
Ooh, okay. Nice.
Oh no, I changed Expunge. Forget about that. Expunge now echoes if it's single target, because I felt like warriors didn't have good single target. There's another way to blow up. Please, don't worry. So
there will be explosions.
Either way you go, there's explosions. I think it's on Punish, which is the first warrior skill up at the top.
Okay.
It's one of these. Not bleed, not devour, lacerated soul.
There you go. A little rupture.
So Yeah, with the set and lacerate, obviously it turns it into a burn skill, into burn stacks instead. So leaning into that fire warrior battle mage dream.
There it is.
So maybe you like stack Inferno and you have it Inferno proccing around you while you're running away, and then you spin around with your lacerate and apply some burn stacks, and then if they're still not dead, you can touch a flame them in the face.
That's right. It's just
Yeah.
just melt faces. Melt faces. I love it.
Yeah, well, Touch of Flame's good against bosses because it's got fire penetration. Bosses normally have higher defenses than normal enemies. So.
Makes sense. Well, awesome. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm loving what you got going on so far. I mean, between Sanctum Breach and Sanctum Breach Rebirth, this one just feels like a much more well-rounded ARPG experience. From the visuals to the design to just the general kind of gameplay loop and the flow of things. Like you said, that those thousands of hours that you put into the first one, really that is kind of showing off here in the second one. And I think you have some additional artwork, and I think coming out too as well. Is that
So
right?
what you're looking at now is the UI overhaul. So people that are playing currently, they're on the crappy placeholder UI.
Good.
But what you now is what I'm going to be using moving forwards.
Perfect. I like it.
Like previously it's like bars and it's just something that I chucked together, whereas with this I feel like you've got your globes, you've got your globe art. You've got like it's just a lot more polished. I feel like I'm looking at a proper game when I look at this UI, whereas before I didn't feel like I was looking at a proper game.
You will always be your own worst critic too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Just FYI.
So I just flip between sort of like, oh yeah, it's a good game. Oh, it's shit.
I hate it. But no, I think it looks really good, and I want to make sure we called that out because I know that was something that you were working on. Well, great.
Yeah.
So, like I said, so far everything is looking fantastic, and I'm really excited for what else you bring to the table. So, if people want to find out more about Sanctum Breach, what are some of the places that they can go and find you guys?
So, if you go to the back of your alley, I've scribbled on a stone a cryptic message. Once you've uncoded that message,
yes, riddles.
No, you just use Google.
Perfect.
Just go to it's on Steam. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then there's a Discord as well.
Yeah, Discord. Yeah. Do you want to come work for me, like PR or something?
Yeah, exactly. Just Sam, remember we have multiple places. We can't just say Google.
Twitter as well. Yeah, I'm on the Twitter. I do the tweets.
Perfect. I'm on the Bird app, as my grandma calls it. I'm on the Bird app.
YouTube sort of sporadically. I found it really hard to keep up with the social media, to be honest. I'm not like a big talker by nature, so I kind of just sort of, I'd rather get on with the coding and then be like, yeah, this one I made, go play it.
Yeah, makes sense.
No, I do try and stay active on social media because I got to do that marketing thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the experience.
They don't tell you have to do marketing when you want to make a game. No, yeah, I try and keep active on social media because I want people's feedback. I want to know what people think of the game. So
for sure. Well, awesome. Well, before we wrap up, were there any last words that you wanna tell people? Besides, check out Sanctum Breach on Steam through the Google.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Well, perfect. So what I went ahead and I've put all of the links to all the places that you can find Sanctum Breach, including the Discord link, if you want to join the community, in the description below. And this is an early access look at Sanctum Breach Rebirth, an upcoming action RPG that has a lot of potential and a lot of promise, and it's been super fun to dive into, especially if you're somebody who likes a bunch of build variety like myself. There's a lot of different ways you can build out your character, and with the flexibility of the skill system, being able to move things as you need to, it helps kind of fill those gaps. But if you want to try to go experiment with something different, you definitely can without having to feel like you're super punished and penalized. So thank you all so much for watching. Sam, thank you so much for joining me here today and talking about your game. Like I said, it's looking good. And that's about it, everybody. So make sure to check those links in the description below. Thank you all so much. And I'll talk to everybody next time.
Cheers.